On a freezing night, a billionaire crossed paths with a quiet little girl, asking for milk not for herself, but for her baby brother. One promise spoken in a trembling voice cracked open a life built on money and silence, leading them all toward a truth no wealth could buy. The Chicago skyline glimmered like a flawless promise beneath the winter night. From the highest floor of Hale Meridian Tower, Rowan Hale stood behind floor-to-ceiling glass, watching the river lights stretch and break like scattered coins. 38 years old. Billionaire. CEO. The city bowed to his name, yet none of it spoke back to him. The penthouse was immaculate. Too immaculate. Marble floors reflected a life polished to perfection, but empty of warmth. Every piece of furniture had been chosen by designers who understood luxury, not belonging. Rowan loosened his tie and set it aside, the silence pressing in as heavily as the glass around him. Mr. Hale. His assistant's voice came softly from the doorway. The quarterly summaries are ready, and Grant Sloan asked me to remind you about tomorrow's board meeting. Rowan didn't turn. Leave them on the desk. You can go home. When the door closed, the quiet returned sharp, absolute. Rowan poured a glass of aged scotch, its amber glow catching the light. It was expensive, rare, meaningless. He took a sip and felt nothing stir inside him. The media called him Chicago's Ice King. Brilliant, untouchable, focused. What they never printed was how accurate the nickname truly was. Rowan's life had become a carefully controlled winter one, without storms, but also without warmth. He rested his palm against the cold glass, his reflection staring back at him, successful, composed, and profoundly alone. Somewhere below the city pulsed with lives, intersecting voices, overlapping families, arguing and laughing and living. Rowan exhaled slowly. He grabbed his coat. For the first time that night, he chose movement over comfort, silence over status, and stepped into the cold, not knowing that a single walk would fracture the life he thought was complete. The wind cut through the streets like thin needles as Rowan walked without direction, his leather shoes ill-suited for slush and snow. He welcomed the discomfort. It reminded him he still had nerves, still had skin. Luxury storefronts faded behind him. Glass and gold gave way to brick and modest neon signs. A quieter neighborhood, older buildings, softer light. One small grocery store remained open, its windows glowing against the dark. Rowan slowed. Inside, the bell chimed as a customer exited, and Rowan caught sight of a child at the counter. She couldn't have been more than 8. Her coat was oversized sleeves nearly swallowing her hands. In her arms, she held a bundled baby wrapped carefully against the cold. "Please," the girl said softly. "I just need milk for my brother." The shop owner hesitated. "Sweetheart, I helped you yesterday." "I know," she replied, not defensive, not dramatic. "And I'm thankful. But he hasn't eaten since this morning." She lifted her chin, voice steady despite her size. "I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up." Something in that sentence struck Rowan with unexpected force. Not the request, the promise. The way she spoke, calm, respectful, dignified, like someone who refused to beg even when she needed help. Rowan stepped inside before he could overthink it. "I'll take care of it," he said, his voice firm but gentle. The girl turned toward him, startled. Up close, her eyes were clear and serious, far older than they should have been. She studied him the way people learn to study strangers when trust is expensive. "Thank you, sir," she said carefully. "But my mom says we shouldn't take things from people we don't know." Rowan knelt so they were eye level. "That's good advice," he said. "What's your name, Lila?" she answered. "And this is Caleb." Rowan felt his chest tighten. "I'm Rowan," he said. "Would it be okay if I bought groceries too, just essentials?" Lila paused, then nodded once. "Okay. But you can't ask where we live." Rowan didn't smile. He nodded. Rowan carried the grocery bags while Lila carried her brother with quiet confidence. She moved carefully, adjusting Caleb's blanket when the wind shifted, whispering to him when he stirred. It wasn't performance. It was responsibility learned too early. "You don't have to follow me," she said after a moment, glancing back. "I know," Rowan replied, "but I'd like to make sure you're safe." Lila considered this, then nodded. "You can walk behind me, not next to me?" Rowan obeyed. Streetlights thinned as they moved closer to the river trail. Snow gathered softly along the edges of the sidewalk. Lila's footsteps were steady, familiar with the path. Rowan realized she had done this many times before. "Do you go to school?" he asked gently. "Yes," she answered. A pause. "When we can." He didn't push. They passed a small park, bare trees creaking in the wind. Finally, Lila slowed near a covered pedestrian overpass. She stopped, her shoulders tensing. "You can stop here," she said quietly. Rowan didn't step forward. "You don't have to show me anything." Lila looked up at him, eyes searching. "If I don't, you'll worry." Rowan felt the truth of it settle between them. "Yes." She nodded once, like someone making a grown decision. Then she turned and led him beneath the shelter of concrete and steel. The space wasn't chaotic. It was careful. Blankets folded, bags lined neatly, a small area made warm against the cold. A woman stood as they approached, her posture instantly protective. "Lila," the woman said sharply. "Who is that?" "This is Rowan," Lila said. "He bought milk and food." The woman's eyes locked on Rowan, alert, guarded, strong. "I'm Mara," she said. "Why are you here?" Rowan held his hands open. "Because your daughter asked," with dignity. And I listened. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was assessment. And for the first time in years, Rowan hoped quietly that he would be found worthy. Under the overpass, the world sounded different. The wind softened, the city noise dulled, and everything felt close, like the night itself had stepped nearer to listen. Mara Quinn stood with her shoulders squared, not to intimidate, but to shield. She was 30, maybe younger in another life, yet her eyes carried the tired intelligence of someone who had learned to measure risks in seconds. Her hair was pulled back, quickly practical, and her hands were clean, as if keeping order was the one thing she refused to surrender. Lila adjusted Caleb's blanket and stepped slightly in front of her mother, as if to explain before anyone could accuse. "He paid," Layla said, "for milk and groceries. I told him he couldn't ask where we sleep." Mara's gaze flicked to the bags, then back to Rowan's face. "And you agreed?" Rowan nodded. "She set the terms. I followed them." Something eased in Mara's expression, barely noticeable, like a door unlocking one click but not opening. "Thank you," she said. The words were polite, controlled. "Now you should leave." Rowan didn't flinch. "I understand. I just wanted to make sure you had what you needed." Mara inhaled slowly, the cold air making her cough once quickly, like she refused to give it attention. Lila's eyes followed the sound, worried but trained not to panic. Rowan kept his voice low. "You don't have to explain anything to me. I'm not here to judge. I'm not calling anyone. I'm not doing anything that puts you at risk." Mara's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with experience. "You can't promise that," she said. "People don't always mean harm. Sometimes they mean help, and the help becomes a problem." Rowan felt that land heavy and true. "Then tell me what doesn't become a problem," he replied. "I'll listen." Mara looked at him for a long beat, weighing him like a storm system. Finally, she nodded toward the bags. "Food, milk, diapers. Those are things. Those don't require trust. But anything else, money favors connections, those come with misunderstandings." Rowan glanced at Lila, whose fingers were gently tapping Caleb's blanket, as if she could soothe the world through repetition. "Lila shouldn't have to carry that much," he said quietly. Mara's jaw tightened. "No, she shouldn't, but she does because she's brave." Lila lifted her chin at the word brave, though her eyes stayed soft, not proud. Just determined. Rowan took a step back, respecting the invisible boundary Mara had drawn in the snow. "Okay," he said. "I'll go. I won't come back unless you want me to." Mara studied him again. "Don't say things you can't keep." Rowan nodded. "Then I'll say something I can keep. If you ever need a doctor for Caleb or a safe family shelter contact, I can provide information. Not pressure. Information." Mara's expression shifted, cautious but practical. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notebook worn at the edges. "Write it down," she said. "Just names. No big speeches." Rowan wrote 2 names, a reputable family shelter director and a pediatrician friend. He handed the paper to Mara as if it were fragile. Lila watched him go, hugging the grocery bag like it was a treasure. Her whisper followed him into the cold. "Thank you, Rowan." Rowan didn't look back until he reached the sidewalk. When he did, he saw Mara already organizing the supplies, and Lila sitting beside Caleb, humming softly. Order in the middle of winter. And Rowan felt a strange ache, like his chest had remembered what warmth was supposed to mean. Rowan's penthouse greeted him the way it always did, quiet, clean, expensive, and indifferent. He stood in his doorway with his coat still on, as if the apartment might swallow him if he stepped fully inside. The city lights outside his windows looked the same as they had an hour ago, but he felt as if he'd walked into a different world and come back carrying something he didn't know how to set down. He tried to read, he tried to work, he tried to let the night become normal again. But Lila's voice kept returning to him, soft and steady. "I'll pay you back when I grow up." And Mara's voice sharper with truth. "Sometimes help becomes a problem." Rowan sat at his desk, fingers hovering above his keyboard, and realized he didn't want to be the kind of help that created fear. He didn't want to show up like a spotlight. He didn't want to make their lives feel like a story starring him. So he did the only thing that made sense. He chose distance. The next morning, Rowan drove to the same grocery store while the city was still yawning awake. The owner recognized him instantly and said nothing, as if his silence was part of the transaction. Rowan filled 2 carts, warm blankets, soup, gentle baby-safe supplies, a sturdy winter coat in an estimated size for Lila, another for Mara, a portable heater with safety shutoff, a small bag of art paper and colored pencils because Lila's fingers had looked like they missed drawing. At the register, the store owner finally spoke. "You know," the man said carefully, "she's a good kid." Rowan nodded once. "I can tell." "You can't fix everything," the owner added, not unkind. Rowan slid his card across the counter. "I'm not trying to fix, I'm trying not to ignore." Instead of taking the supplies himself, Rowan paid for delivery. No surprise visit, no pressure, no entering their space, just a transfer of warmth from one world to another. He drove near the river trail and waited from a respectful distance, watching snow drift lazily through the morning light. His breath fogged the car window. When the delivery van arrived, he felt his hands tighten on the steering wheel. Mara appeared beneath the overpass, cautious first, then curious. She spoke briefly to the driver, took a paper, read it. Rowan had written only 1 sentence. No obligation, no visit, just warmth. Lila popped into view, wearing yesterday's oversized jacket, then froze when she saw the winter coat in the pile. Her face brightened in a way that made Rowan's throat tighten. She held it up against her chest, like she didn't trust it was real. Mara didn't smile openly, but her shoulders loosened. She began sorting supplies efficiently, creating order the way other people created prayers. Rowan watched until everything was carried inside their sheltered space. Then, as Mara looked around briefly, like she was searching for the source, Rowan sank lower in his seat, refusing to become a shadow in their world. He didn't wave. He didn't call out. He just left, and for the first time in years, the feeling in his chest wasn't emptiness. It was responsibility. Back at Hale Meridian Tower, the elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Rowan's reflection in the mirrored wall looked the same: tailored suit, controlled posture, calm face. But something behind his eyes had shifted. He walked into his office and found Grant Sloan already inside, leaning against the window like he owned the skyline. Grant was 45, perfectly groomed, smile polished into a weapon. He didn't rise when Rowan entered. "There he is," Grant said lightly. "Our disappearing CEO." Rowan set his coat down with slow precision. "It's 9 a.m., Grant. If you're going to accuse me, at least have coffee first." Grant's smile widened. "Cute. But the board isn't laughing. You missed 2 prep calls. You cut the holiday client budget. People are whispering." Rowan opened his laptop without sitting. "Let them whisper." Grant stepped closer, voice smooth. "That's not how this works. We are not a charity. We are not a therapy session. We are a machine, Rowan. And machines don't wander off because they feel something." Rowan finally looked at him. "And that's your problem. You think feeling is weakness." Grant's eyes narrowed. "I think feeling is expensive. And you've been acting expensive." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Say what you mean." Grant exhaled like he was doing Rowan a favor. "You've been seen in neighborhoods you don't belong in. You've been distracted. Investors don't like mystery. They like predictability. They like the Ice King." Rowan's voice stayed calm but colder. "I didn't ask to be called that." "No," Grant agreed, "but you benefited from it." Rowan leaned forward slightly. "The company is stable. The numbers are strong. Our staff will appreciate bonuses more than caviar this year." Grant scoffed. "Staff appreciation doesn't impress investors." Rowan replied, "Ethics impress the future." Grant stared at him like Rowan had spoken nonsense. "Are you hearing yourself? This is a midlife crisis wrapped in morality." Rowan's hands folded neatly on the desk. "If being human is a crisis, then yes." Grant's smile thinned. "Listen, I don't care what you're doing in your personal time. I care what it does to the company. Tomorrow's board meeting is not friendly. Gerald and the others are already worried. They're asking whether you still have the edge." Rowan's eyes didn't blink. "Do you want my edge?" Grant's posture shifted just slightly, like he recognized the sharpness beneath Rowan's calm. "I want you focused," Grant said. "I want you predictable." Rowan's voice dropped. "Predictable men are easy to replace." A silence stretched clean and tense. Grant straightened his jacket, smile returning like armor. "Be careful, Rowan. People love you right up until you stop being useful." Rowan's reply came quietly. "And that's why I'm changing." Grant walked out with his polished steps, leaving behind the faint scent of cologne and warning. Rowan sat alone, staring at the river through the glass, thinking of a small child who carried a baby like a promise. For the first time, the boardroom felt less dangerous than the silence he used to live in, and he knew which one he was willing to fight. Rowan stared at the prepaid phone display inside the grocery store longer than he should have. He knew the danger of crossing invisible lines. Help could quietly turn into control if it wasn't handled with care. Mara had made that clear. Lila had made it clearer without even trying. But a phone wasn't ownership. It was choice. Rowan paid for the device and a modest service plan, declining the clerk's offer to activate extra features. No tracking, no apps, no unnecessary data, just calls, just safety. That afternoon, he returned to the river trail, not under cover of night this time, but during daylight when shadows had less power. He stopped at a respectful distance and waited. Lila spotted him first, bundled in her new coat. Her face brightened, but she didn't run. She glanced back toward her mother, checking permission. Mara stepped forward slowly. "You came back." "I said I wouldn't unless you wanted me to," Rowan replied carefully. "I'm here to ask, not assume." Mara folded her arms, not defensively, but thoughtfully. "And what are you asking?" Rowan held up the small paper bag. 5 minutes. I brought something practical, If you say no, I leave. Mara considered him, then nodded once. 5. Rowan placed the phone on a crate not in Mara's hands. This isn't a gift you have to accept. It's an option. Emergencies only. No obligation to answer me. Ever. Mara stared at the phone, then at him. Why Rowan didn't rush the answer. Because if Caleb gets sick again, or you're unsure about medicine, you shouldn't have to guess alone. And because Lila shouldn't have to be the only adult in the room. That landed. Lila hugged her teddy bear eyes, flicking between them. It doesn't make us owe him right, she asked her mother. Mara's throat tightened. No, sweetheart, Rowan added gently. You don't owe me anything. Not now. Not later. Mara finally picked up the phone, weighed it in her palm like a fragile truth. We don't depend on people, she said. We communicate. Rowan nodded. That's all this is. A moment passed. The wind shifted. Lila looked up at Rowan. Can you read again sometime? Rowan smiled softly. If your mom says yes, Mara hesitated. Then not today. Rowan stepped back immediately. Understood. As he left, he felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest, not satisfaction. Trust. That night, Rowan's phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. He answered instantly. This is Mara, the voice said lower than before. Controlled. Caleb feels warm, not panicking, just checking. Rowan sat up straight. Thank you for calling. How's his breathing? Okay, slightly fast? He's fussy. Rowan chose calm over urgency. Let's get numbers first. Do you have a thermometer? No. I can bring one. And baby-safe fever reducer. No doctor unless you want one. There was a pause, long enough to feel Mara calculating consequences. Bring the medicine, she said, and instructions. Rowan arrived within 20 minutes. He didn't knock loudly, he didn't rush. He set the bag down and stepped back. Mara examined everything carefully. You didn't bring extras. Rowan shook his head. Only what you asked for. Lila sat beside Caleb, humming softly, her fingers tracing the edge of his blanket like a habit born of worry. Rowan noticed how carefully she watched her mother's face, searching for permission to feel afraid. Mara took Caleb's temperature. 101. Rowan kept his voice steady. The medicine should help. Dosage is written here. If it doesn't come down or if his breathing changes, I recommend a doctor. I know one who works discreetly and legally. No records beyond standard care. Mara's eyes flicked up. No authorities, none, Rowan said firmly. Your consent, your control. Silence stretched. Lila spoke softly. Mom, he needs to get better. Mara closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. Call your doctor friend. Dr. Adrian Park arrived later that evening, calm, respectful, explaining every step before taking it. He confirmed a treatable infection and emphasized warmth and rest. He'll recover, Adrian said gently. But environment matters. Mara looked at the concrete overhead. Rowan didn't rush her. He waited. 3 days, Mara said finally. That's all. Rowan nodded. Your rules. Lila exhaled for the first time all night, and as Rowan followed them into the elevator of Hale Meridian Tower, he understood something deeply unsettling. His home had never felt empty until he saw it fill. The penthouse felt different the moment they entered. Not because of noise, there wasn't much, but because the silence changed shape. It bent instead of pressing. Lila stepped forward slowly, eyes wide. It's like the sky lives here. Rowan smiled faintly. It doesn't usually. Mara remained near the door, Caleb against her shoulder, posture careful. One room, she reminded him. Rowan gestured down the hall. Already set. The guest suite was simple, warm, prepared with intention rather than luxury. Clean linens, a crib borrowed from a building manager, night lights, nothing overwhelming. Mara nodded. This works. That night, Rowan stayed out of the way. He answered emails quietly. Heated soup without ceremony. Let Mara lead. But when Lila wandered into the living room clutching a book, she stopped at the edge of the rug. "Can you read?" she asked again, hope careful but present. Rowan looked toward the guest room. "If your mom agrees." Mara hesitated in the doorway, then sighed. "One story." Rowan read slowly, his voice adapting to characters' softening edges, making the world gentle instead of grand. Lila leaned against the couch, teddy bear tucked under her chin. Mara watched from the doorway, arms crossed, not guarding, observing. When the story ended, Lila yawned. "You sound like someone who stays," Mara corrected gently. "We're staying 3 days." Lila nodded. 3 days is still staying. Later, after Lila slept and Caleb's fever eased, Mara stood by the window, city lights reflecting in her eyes. "This doesn't mean forever," she said quietly. Rowan joined her, keeping space. "I know, and I won't let my children think comfort is something people give and take away." Rowan met her gaze. "Then let it be something they experienced. Not a promise. A memory." Mara considered him for a long moment. "Sleep," she said finally. "Tomorrow will be harder." Rowan nodded, but as he lay awake that night listening to the soft rhythm of a family breathing safely down the hall, Rowan realized something irreversible. For the first time in his life, he didn't want morning to come faster. He wanted it to come right. Morning entered the penthouse, quietly filtered through tall windows like a careful guest. Rowan woke early as he always did, but for the first time he hesitated before leaving his room. The sound he heard, soft footsteps, the low hum of a kettle, was unfamiliar. Domestic. Real. In the kitchen, Mara moved with practiced efficiency. She had tied her hair back, sleeves rolled as if this space were temporary, but respected. Lila sat at the counter, drawing on the art paper Rowan had left out, her teddy bear perched beside her like a supervisor. Rowan stopped short. I've got it," Mara said, not unkindly. "Routine matters." Rowan nodded and poured coffee instead, careful not to disrupt. He noticed Lila's drawing tall windows, a couch, 3 small figures, and one taller one standing slightly apart. "Is that me?" Rowan asked gently. Lila smiled without looking up. "You're the tall one who listens." Rowan swallowed. "I'm trying." Caleb slept peacefully in the guest room. Dr. Park's instructions were taped neatly to the counter, followed to the letter. Everything was orderly, intentional, temporary. Rowan's phone buzzed. Grant. Then another message. Board reminders. Pressure wrapped in calendar invites. Mara noticed. "Work, yes," Rowan said. "I'll handle it." She turned to face him fully. "I need to be clear," she said calmly. "We are grateful. But we're not staying past what we agreed. Comfort can't become confusion." Rowan met her gaze. "I won't confuse it. And my children won't be used as reasons," Mara added, voice steady. "Not in meetings, not in stories, not in arguments." Rowan's answer came immediately. "They're not leverage. They're people." Mara exhaled the tension, easing just enough to allow trust to breathe. Later, Rowan left for the office. Lila stood by the doorcoat on, watching him. "Will you come back?" she asked. Rowan crouched to her level. "Yes, tonight." Lila nodded, satisfied. "Okay, I'll draw you doing that." As the elevator doors closed, Rowan felt a strange weight, lighter than responsibility, heavier than promise. He realized he wasn't afraid of losing his company. He was afraid of proving Lila wrong. The boardroom was cold in a different way. Polished wood, filtered light. Faces arranged into expressions of concern and calculation. Rowan took his seat without ceremony, his posture calm, his mind sharper than it had been in years. Grant Sloan began smoothly. "We're here to discuss focus, stability, public perception." Rowan listened without interrupting. "You've adjusted budgets," a board member said. "Reduced luxury client events. Increased internal welfare." "Why?" Rowan answered plainly. Because long-term value isn't built on spectacle. It's built on people who feel respected. Grant leaned back, smiling faintly. That's admirable, but the market doesn't reward feelings. Rowan met his eyes. The market rewards consistency. Our numbers are strong. Our compliance is clean. Our risk exposure is lower than last quarter. Another member frowned. There are rumors. Rowan didn't flinch. Then verify facts, not impressions. Grant interjected, voice smooth as glass. Your personal distractions are becoming visible. Visibility creates narrative. Rowan folded his hands. Then let me be clear. My personal life does not interfere with my legal, ethical, or professional obligations. Silence stretched. A senior member finally spoke. Are you still fully committed to this company? Rowan thought of Lila's drawing, of Mara's rules, of a baby breathing easier in a warm room. Yes, Rowan said, but not at the cost of my humanity. Grant's smile thinned. Humanity doesn't sign contracts, Rowan replied calmly. People do. The meeting ended without fireworks, but the air was changed. As the room emptied, Grant approached Rowan, lowering his voice. You're drifting, Grant said, and drift gets corrected. Rowan looked at him steadily. Correction only works when you're wrong. Grant's eyes hardened. Be careful. You're not as alone as you think. Rowan stood. And you're not as necessary as you believe. When Rowan left the building, he didn't head home immediately. He sat in his car for a long moment, breathing, reminding himself what mattered. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We've decided to leave early. Please don't come looking. Rowan's chest tightened. Not panic, respect, and fear. Rowan entered the penthouse slowly, as if speed might shatter something fragile. The guest suite door was closed. Inside, the bed was made with care, towels folded, the borrowed crib empty. Everything returned exactly as it had been, clean, orderly, respectful. On the pillow lay a folded note. Rowan sat before opening it, already knowing what it would say. Rowan, thank you for what you gave my children: safety, warmth, and respect. But I can't let kindness become dependency. I need to know we can stand without leaning on someone else's life. This is me choosing stability the only way I know how, step by step. Please don't search for us. Mara below it in crayon, I will miss you. Love, Lila. Rowan pressed the paper flat against his palm, breathing through the ache rising in his chest. There was no anger in the note, no accusation, just choice. He walked to the window. The city looked unchanged, but he felt altered. He thought of all the times he had left places without a word, all the silences he'd chosen because they were easier. Now he understood the cost. Rowan sat on the edge of the bed and waited 5 minutes, then 10, like staying still might make leaving reversible. It didn't. Finally, he stood, grabbed his coat, and headed out. Not to chase, not to control, but to keep the one promise that mattered. He would not disappear. And somewhere beyond the glass and steel, a child who believed he listened deserved to know the truth. Rowan did not tear the city apart looking for them. That was the first promise he kept. He searched the way Mara would respect, quietly, legally, and without turning lives into spectacle. No private investigators, no pressure, no favors that bent rules. He called community centers, family shelters, outreach programs he had supported anonymously for years without ever learning their names. He left messages that sounded nothing like a billionaire. My name is Rowan Hale. I'm looking for a family who may have stayed briefly with me. I'm not asking for their location unless they've given consent. I only want to leave a message if that's allowed. Most said no. Some said maybe. Rowan accepted every answer without argument. At night, the penthouse felt colder than before. Not empty, hollow. He found Lila's drawing tucked into his briefcase and unfolded it carefully on his desk. 4 figures, tall windows, hands touching. He didn't frame it, he He didn't post it. He kept it where he could see it while he worked. At the office, Grant Sloan watched him with thinly disguised curiosity. "You look tired," Grant remarked during a meeting. "Trouble at home," Rowan didn't rise to it. "I'm focused." Grant smirked. Focused people don't change. Rowan thought of Mara's words, step by step, and let the silence answer for him. 2 days passed. On the third evening, Rowan's phone rang. An unfamiliar number. He answered without hesitation. "This is Denise Harper," a calm voice said, "Director of First Harbor Family Shelter." Rowan stood. "Yes. A child named Lila asked me to call," Denise continued. "She said you keep your word." Rowan closed his eyes, relief flooding him so fast it almost hurt. "Is she safe?" "Yes," Denise said gently. "All of them are. Her mother asked me to be clear about that." "Thank you," Rowan whispered. Denise paused. "Mara also asked me to say this. She didn't leave because of fear. She left because she didn't want her children to think comfort must be borrowed." Rowan nodded even though Denise couldn't see it. "I understand. She agreed to meet you," Denise added. "On neutral ground. Tomorrow afternoon, here at the shelter. No cameras, no promises." Rowan exhaled slowly. "I'll be there." When the call ended, Rowan sat back down, hands steady, heart racing. For the first time since they left, hope didn't feel like a wish. It felt like permission. First Harbor Family Shelter was nothing like Rowan's penthouse. The walls were warm beige, the chairs mismatched. Children's drawings filled the hallway houses with crooked roofs, suns that smiled too widely. It smelled like soup and laundry detergent and patience. Rowan arrived early. He sat where Denise indicated and waited. When Mara entered, she did not look surprised to see him. She looked prepared, calm, wearing the same steady strength that had first drawn Rowan's respect. Lila spotted him and stopped short, eyes wide. She didn't run. She walked, measured, deliberate, until she stood in front of him. "You came," she said. "I said I would," Rowan replied. She nodded, satisfied, then returned to her coloring table, trusting the adults to do their work. Mara sat across from Rowan. "I asked for neutral ground." "You got it," Rowan said. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "This isn't a reunion," Mara said gently. "It's a conversation." Rowan accepted that. "That's all I want." Silence settled, not awkward, but full. "I didn't leave because you did anything wrong," Mara said. "I left because staying felt too easy." Rowan nodded. "Easy can be dangerous." "Yes," she said. "Especially for children. They learn patterns fast." Rowan chose his words carefully. "I don't want to be a pattern of rescue. I want to be a pattern of consistency. If you say no, I respect it. If you say yes, I show up the same way tomorrow." Mara studied him. "And if we say not now?" "Then I wait," Rowan said, without disappearing. Lila looked up from her drawing. "Mom, he listens." Mara closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Listening isn't enough." "I know," Rowan said. "That's why I'm not offering solutions. I'm offering presence. Within your rules." Mara leaned back, crossing her arms, not defensively, but thoughtfully. "We're rebuilding. Slowly. Jobs, school stability, health routines." Rowan nodded. "I won't interrupt that. Support doesn't mean access," Mara continued. "I understand," Rowan said. Another pause. Then Mara said finally, "You can walk with us. Sometimes. Not lead, not follow. Walk." Rowan felt something loosen in his chest. "I can do that." Lila smiled at her paper, drawing another figure slightly closer now. Weeks passed. Not in headlines. Not in dramatic gestures. In routines. Lila started school nearby, her backpack nearly as big as she was. Rowan helped with homework once a week, only when invited. Mara found work with flexible hours through a shelter connection, not a corporate shortcut. Caleb grew stronger. Louder, curious. Rowan remained Rowan's CEO, public figure. but his life bent around new priorities. Grant noticed. "You're changing again," Grant said one afternoon. "Quieter this time." Rowan replied, "Growth doesn't announce itself." Grant scoffed. "You think this ends well?" Rowan met his gaze. "I think it ends honestly." That evening, Rowan met Mara and the children at the park near the river. Lila ran ahead, laughter breaking free like it had been waiting for permission. Mara stood beside Rowan. "I won't pretend this isn't complicated." Rowan nodded. "Complicated is real." "You're not their savior," she said. "I don't want to be," Rowan replied. "I want to be reliable." Mara looked at him. Really looked. "Reliability is rarer than money." Lila ran back, breathless. "Mom, Rowan, look." She held up a new drawing. This time the windows were smaller, the house simpler, but the figures stood closer together. Mara smiled softly. "What is it, our place?" Lila said. "Not big, just ours." Rowan crouched, heart steady. "It's perfect." As the sun dipped low, casting gold across the river, Rowan realized something simple and final. Home wasn't marble or glass. It wasn't a penthouse or a shelter. It was the quiet decision made again and again to stay kind, to stay present, and to walk forward together. And for the first time, Rowan Hale didn't feel like a man who had found something. He felt like a man who had been found. The problem didn't arrive loudly. It never did. It came in the form of an envelope on Rowan's desk, cream-colored heavy paper stamped with the seal of his own foundation. A routine audit, a request for clarification. One small line stood out. Community Housing Sponsorship Review. Rowan read it twice, then a third time. The foundation board had noticed his recent involvement with local shelters. Not suspicious, just curious. Grant Sloane's voice echoed faintly in Rowan's memory. People don't like quiet changes. That evening, Rowan told Mara everything. They sat at the small table in the community center, Caleb asleep in his stroller, Lila coloring quietly nearby. "I won't let this touch your life," Rowan said calmly. "No names, no files, no photos." Mara listened, her face unreadable. "I didn't ask you to protect us from paperwork." "I know," Rowan said. "I'm telling you so you're never surprised." Lila looked up. "Is something wrong?" Mara smiled gently. "No, sweetheart. Just grown-up conversations." Rowan nodded. "About making sure grown-ups do the right thing." That night, Rowan declined a gala invitation for the first time in years. Instead, he stayed home reviewing policies, rewriting language, removing any clause that allowed personal influence to blur ethical lines. He didn't move money. He moved boundaries. At the next board meeting, Grant leaned back in his chair. "You're overcorrecting," he said. "People expect generosity with visibility," Rowan replied evenly. "Children deserve privacy more than donors deserve applause." Silence followed. The vote passed. When Rowan left the room, his phone buzzed. A message from Mara. "Layla says thank you for listening even when she wasn't talking." Rowan smiled, a warmth settling in his chest. Quiet had been tested, and it held. It happened on a Saturday. The park was busy, families, joggers, dogs chasing sticks. Rowan sat on the grass while Lila carefully showed him how to braid a friendship bracelet. "You're doing it wrong," she said kindly. Rowan laughed. "I accept guidance." Mara watched from a bench, Caleb balanced on her hip. Rowan, Lila asked suddenly. "Yes, are you going to leave?" The question was simple. Too simple. Rowan didn't answer right away. Mara stiffened slightly. "Lila, it's okay," Rowan said softly. He looked at Lila, meeting her eyes at her level. "Why do you ask people help?" Lila said. "Then they go back to their real lives." Rowan felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest. He chose honesty over reassurance. "I don't know what the future looks like," he said carefully. "But I do know this. I don't disappear when things get normal." Lila studied him. "So, you stay even when nothing bad is happening." Yes, Rowan said, especially then. Mara closed her eyes briefly, emotion crossing her face. Later, as the sun dipped low, Mara walked beside Rowan. That answer mattered. I meant it, Rowan replied. I know, she said. That's what scares me. Rowan nodded. Me too. That night, Lila left a bracelet on Rowan's kitchen counter when she and Mara headed back to the shelter housing unit. A small note was tied to it. This means you come back. Rowan wore it the next day to a board meeting hidden beneath his cuff. No one noticed, but he felt it with every movement. Winter softened into early spring, not dramatically, just enough. Mara signed a lease on a modest apartment near Lila's school. No shortcuts, no favors. Rowan helped only where asked, references, moving boxes, silence when needed. On move-in day, Rowan stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. This is yours, he said. I won't step in unless invited. Mara smiled. You're learning. Lila ran through the apartment, laughing at the echo. It's small, Mara knelt. Is that bad? Lila shook her head. No, it sounds like us, Caleb babbled in agreement. That evening they sat on the floor eating takeout from paper cartons. No table yet, no couch, just closeness. Mara looked at Rowan. You don't owe us anything, I know, Rowan said. And we don't belong to you, I know, he repeated. Lila leaned against his arm. But you're still ours a little. Rowan smiled. I hope so. As he left that night, Rowan didn't feel loss. He felt continuity. Weeks later, Rowan received a photo. Lila's first school art fair. Her painting hung crookedly on a corkboard. A simple house, 4 figures. This time, one stood slightly to the side. Not inside, not outside. Present. Rowan understood. Some stories don't end with doors closing. They end with doors left open intentionally, gently, so everyone can choose when and how to walk through. And that, Rowan realized, was the truest form of home. The day felt ordinary. That was the miracle. No emergencies, no urgent calls, no misunderstandings waiting to be untangled. Just a quiet Saturday morning with pale sunlight slipping through the thin curtains of Mara's apartment. Rowan arrived exactly on time. Not early, not late. He carried a paper bag from a neighborhood bakery, nothing extravagant, just bread that smelled warm and honest. Lila opened the door before Mara could reach it. You remembered, Lila said, not surprised, just pleased. I always do, Rowan replied. Inside the apartment was slowly becoming itself. A small bookshelf, a second-hand couch, crayon marks on the fridge held up by mismatched magnets. Caleb sat on the floor surrounded by soft blocks, determinedly stacking 2 before knocking them over and laughing at his own success. Mara poured coffee. You didn't have to bring anything, I wanted to, Rowan said. There's a difference. They ate together at the small table. Lila talked about school, about a spelling test she'd passed, about a friend who liked dinosaurs, about how the classroom window rattled when buses drove by. Rowan listened. Really listened. At one point, Mara caught herself watching him, not with caution this time, but with quiet curiosity. You're different here, she said. Rowan looked up. Here, yes, she replied. You don't try to fix things. Rowan smiled faintly. I've learned that fixing can feel like erasing. Lila slid a piece of paper across the table. I made rules, she announced. Rowan read them carefully. Say when you're coming. Say when you're leaving. Don't disappear. He looked up. These are good rules. They're important, Lila said seriously. Rowan nodded. Then I agree to all of them. Mara exhaled something unspoken easing in her chest. Later they walked to the park. No symbolism, no speeches, just movement and air and laughter. Rowan pushed Caleb on the swing while Lila ran back and forth, insisting on being timed. Again, she shouted. But faster, Rowan obliged. For the first time in years, Rowan noticed he wasn't thinking about what came next. He was inside the moment, and it held. The article was small, buried on page 6 of a business journal. Hale Industries announces expanded community partnership model. No photos, no personal names. Just a shift in language, long-term support, local leadership, child privacy protections. Grant Sloan called within the hour. "You're rewriting your legacy," Grant said flatly. Rowan didn't deny it. "I'm refining it. This isn't what people expect from you." Rowan looked out the window of his office, the city stretching endlessly below. "Expectation isn't a compass," Grant sighed. "You're risking perception." "I'm investing in integrity," Rowan replied. "It compounds better." That afternoon, Rowan visited Lila's school for the first time, not as a donor, not as a speaker, just as a guest invited by Mara to attend a small art showcase. Lila's drawing hung among dozens of others. Simple lines, bold colors, a park. 3 figures close together. One standing just behind, not looming, not absent. Mara noticed Rowan's stillness. "You okay?" Rowan nodded. "I just realized something. What I used to believe influence meant being seen everywhere," he said. "Now I think it means being trusted somewhere." Lila ran over. "Did you see mine? It's my favorite," Rowan said honestly. On the walk home, Mara spoke carefully. "People will connect dots eventually." "I know," Rowan replied, "and when they do, I'll tell the truth," he said. "That nothing here is owned. That everything here is chosen." Mara stopped walking. "You understand that choosing us means choosing uncertainty." Rowan met her gaze. "So does choosing love." That night, Rowan left early, on purpose. At the door, Lila looked up. "You said when you leave." Rowan knelt. "I'm leaving now. I'll be back Tuesday." She nodded, satisfied. Mara watched from behind her daughter, something like relief softening her posture. Trust, Rowan realized, wasn't built by staying forever. It was built by leaving correctly. Spring arrived without ceremony. No dramatic change. No moment anyone pointed to and said, "This is when everything became better." It simply arrived, soft light through open windows, air that no longer bit the skin, mornings that felt less guarded. Rowan noticed it first in the small things. Lila no longer checked the door every time he stood up. Caleb laughed more than he cried. Mara slept through the night. These were not victories anyone applauded. But Rowan understood their weight. One evening, Rowan walked with Mara and the children along the river path. The city reflected itself in the water, less sharp now, more forgiving. Lila skipped ahead, stopping to examine a dandelion growing stubbornly through a crack in the pavement. "Mom," she called. "Look, it grew even though it's not supposed to." Mara smiled. "Some things do." Rowan watched the exchange quietly. He had learned that the most important moments never announced themselves. They sat on a bench, Caleb dozing against Mara's shoulder. Lila leaned against Rowan's arm without asking. He stayed still, letting the moment decide for itself. Rowan, Mara said after a while. "Yes, I've been thinking," she began carefully. "About us. About what this is becoming." Rowan turned fully toward her. "I'm listening." Mara took a breath. "I don't want a story where you save us, and I don't want a story where we complete you. I want something real, uneven, sometimes hard." Rowan nodded. "So do I." She looked at him. "That means boundaries, disagreements, days when I don't want help, days when I do. I can live with that," Rowan said. "I prefer it." Mara studied his face, searching for hesitation. Finding none, she continued. "And it means the children come first, always," Rowan answered without pause. "They already do." Lila looked up. "What are you talking about?" Mara smiled softly. "Grown-up plans?" Lila considered this, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made something." She handed it to Rowan. It wasn't a drawing of a house this time. It was 4 stick figures standing under a wide sky. No walls, no roof, just space. Above them, in careful letters, Lila had written, "We stay." Rowan felt emotion rise steady but powerful. He knelt so they were eye level. "This is very important," he said. Lila nodded seriously. "It means no disappearing." "I understand," Rowan said. "And I agree." Mara watched her eyes shining not with fear, but with recognition. That night, Rowan didn't return to the penthouse. He didn't stay at the apartment either. He walked home slowly alone and realized something had changed inside him. For the first time in his life, home wasn't a location waiting for him. It was a direction he was choosing again and again. Weeks later, Rowan stood in his office as the board finalized a new initiative, long-term family stability partnerships, designed and led by community voices. No branding, no headlines. Grant Sloan shook his head. "You could have owned this narrative." Rowan replied calmly. "Some things shouldn't be owned." That evening, Rowan arrived at Mara's apartment exactly when he said he would. Dinner was simple. Lila set the table proudly. Caleb banged his spoon, delighted by the noise. Afterward, as the children slept, Mara stood by the window. "You don't talk about the penthouse anymore," she observed. Rowan smiled faintly. "It was never really mine. It was just where I stayed." She turned toward him, and this Rowan answered honestly. "This is where I choose to be." Mara reached for his hand, tentative but certain. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "So am I," Rowan said. They stood there together, not promising perfection, not promising ease, just promising presence. Later, Rowan tucked a blanket around Lila when she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. "You came back," she murmured. "I told you I would," Rowan whispered. She smiled, already drifting back to sleep. In that moment, Rowan understood something profound. True wealth was not protection from hardship. It was the courage to stay kind, steady, and accountable without guarantees. And as Rowan Hale turned off the light and stepped quietly into the hallway, he knew with absolute certainty this was the longest promise he had ever made, and the first one he was truly ready to keep. Did this story move you? Share your thoughts in the comments and rate this story from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Click on the last screen to see the next emotional chapter waiting for you. See you in the next story.